If you haven't been involved in scouting recently, there's a lot more to it than you'd imagine. We'll tell you all about it coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Florence Civic Center. We're focused on the Distinguished Citizens Award Dinner of the Pee Dee Area Council of the Boy Scouts, which was held here last Thursday evening. And we're visiting with Dr. Eddie Floyd, the founder and president of Floyd Medical Associates, and a Distinguished Citizen Award Steering Committee member. Good morning, Dr. Floyd.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for being with
Good.
us this morning.
Good. Thank you for having me.
Incredible opportunity to highlight the life of so many amazing folks that were at the event last week, but of course to get you in particular to talk about Dr. Frank Lee Sr., to think about all the activity at last Thursday night's event, the youth and the folks of all ages, races, sexes there celebrating the life of so many. It was a wonderful evening.
It really is. He's a great, great individual.
Absolutely. Real quick about yourself, Dr. Floyd. Are you originally from the area?
I'm from Lake City. I grew up in Lake City, went to high school in Lake City, and then went to my beloved University of South Carolina after that.
That's wonderful. Do you still have family here in the area?
Tremendous number of family, especially in the Lake City area.
Is that right?
Right.
That's wonderful. And you said you attended school in Columbia. You went on to med school there as well?
I went to school in Charleston, the medical school in Charleston, finished in 3.5 years, and then went to Charity Hospital, interned, and did my surgery residency there. We were there 6 years in New Orleans.
Growing up in Lake City, were you active in scouting?
Oh yeah, absolutely. An Eagle Scout, which I'm very proud of.
I think I saw that a couple of years ago you were honored by the Pee Dee Area Council as a Distinguished Eagle.
One of the greatest honors I've ever had.
Is that right?
It sure was.
That's fantastic. How old were you when you attained the rank of Eagle?
Ooh, I was 16.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Have any of your children got active in scouting?
My son was a scout. He never became an Eagle Scout, but he stayed in scouting for quite a while, and I have a few grandchildren that are in scouting at this time, and have encouraged them very much to participate, because it's such a healthy outlet for young kids, I think.
Absolutely. Well, the focus so much, and I'm so glad we could get you in this morning to think about last Thursday night's event, and we think about all the activities revolving around the Distinguished Citizen. You know him about as well as anyone in the community. And could you share with the viewers a little bit about Dr. Frank Lee Sr., and then we'll talk about some of his commitments to the community and what all he's done in the medical community.
Well, Dr. Lee, as most people know, is my uncle. And I came back to practice in Florence in 1965, and actually joined. We didn't actually go into practice together, but we worked very actively together. He taught me a lot of surgery. He took me under his wing. He championed my causes, and he was just like a father to me all through my career. And I just admire him so much, and he's such a great man, and it's just such an honor to have honored him in the way that he was honored on Thursday night.
How about when we think about, for viewers on the Strand or in southeastern North Carolina or even other parts of the PD who may not have felt they came directly in contact with him? I think that's probably impossible, it sounds like. He had such a dramatic impact as a contributor to the medical community in Florence. Can you talk about that impact?
You know, the medical history in Florence is absolutely fascinating. And when you start talking about the medical history of Florence, it all really came from one family, the McLeod family, and the two giants were Dr. F.H. McLeod and Dr. James McLeod. And then it turns out that probably the other two giants in the medical community were Dr. Lamar Lee Sr. and Dr. Frank, and then Dr. Bruce. And these are the guys that made Florence into what an absolute fantastic medical community. If you look at all the medical communities in probably the Carolinas or the Southeast, you won't see the medical facilities in a town the size of Florence like we have. When I go to medical meetings, and I say I'm from Florence, and we have probably 50,000 people, and we got 450 doctors in Florence, everybody just cannot believe that. But it was built by these pioneers, these individuals. And Dr. Frank Lee is the last of the great pioneers in medicine in Florence. Mm-hmm. And probably people don't really realize the impact that he had on our medical community. When you look at the hospitals, you look at facilities we have, I mean, you can credit a lot of this to him personally.
Share with the viewers a little bit about the history of his involvement with Carolina's hospital system. I know Jim O'Loughlin's coming in a few minutes, who's there now, and of course you've been very active, I believe, as the chairman of the board currently.
Right.
What about his involvement with helping to found Carolina's hospital system?
Well, it's all a history, and it goes back to actually goes back to the McLeods. The McLeods brought in my great uncle and Dr. Lee's uncle that practiced with them, who was their first cousin, and he came and they split off, and Dr. Barnwell founded Saunders Memorial Hospital. And when I came back to Florence, the name was Saunders Memorial Hospital. And Dr. Lee and Dr. Lee Sr. were the ones that actually built that into a great institution, and they finally changed the name to Florence General. Mm-hmm. And then Dr. Bruce and Dr. Thomason sort of took Bruce Hospital and did such a magnificent job, and then the two hospitals merged and became Carolina's hospital system. And Dr. Lee, during that whole process, was the driving force that for all of this to happen. And you know, the hospital on the Pamplico Highway is testament of his accomplishments.
Absolutely, and I think a spinoff of that is the, am I correct, the Doctors Bruce and Lee Foundation?
Well, when a few years ago, actually, we sold the hospital. Okay. We sold the hospital. Dr. Lee thought that was a good, the thing that we should do, and we sold the hospital. The healthcare company that bought the hospital agreed to build a $100 million hospital and put a tremendous amount of money in the medical community, which our hospital at that time was not willing to do. And then with the proceeds from the sale, we have right now close to $135 million, $40 million foundation, which spends off each year 5% of that to the community, which will end up being probably $6 to $7 million a year we will contribute to the community. Wow. And Dr. Lee is chairman of that board, and has provided tremendous leadership for all of us, and I would say younger people, but that's probably
all ages, yes. When you think about, would you mind sharing with the viewers some of your remarks at last Thursday night's event to honor Dr. Frank Lee Sr.? You think there's so many things that came anything in particular that just jumped out?
Well, we fondly call, everybody in the hospital fondly calls him Dr. Frank. Wow. I mean, it's not Dr. Lee, it's Dr. Frank. Everybody knows him as Dr. Frank. And he is one of the great jewels. He will still go in the hospital, check the patients, be sure everybody's happy, everybody always teased him about being so frugal. They would, saving money and everything, and he really has been an inspiration to all of us. But he is probably, if I have to look back, probably one of the smartest people I've ever been associated with. He has a lot of common sense. When you ask him about a surgical problem or a medical problem. I mean, he will analyze it. He will come up with some practical solution that always amazes you.
Well, it's so exciting to hear about his involvement even now that you all had sold out to the group,
Right.
and they made a commitment to come in here and do a lot. It's so exciting to see. I'm a Durham, North Carolina
Right.
resident. My
Sure.
family's been involved with Duke since before it was
Sure.
Duke, and I've seen the commitment that a community hospital can make
Right.
and truly do that. It's so exciting to hear what you all have been able to do even after Carolina's hospital became an entirely new enigma. This is amazing.
Yeah. I think Carolina's hospital system now is probably on the most solid footing that I have seen it on in the last since I came 38 years ago. I think we've all worked very hard with Dr. Lee's leadership, and I think we have finally we're probably in better shape now, in better condition now. We have a better hospital than we've ever had since I've been here.
And Floyd Medical Associates interfaces with the Carolinas hospital system?
No, our office is there, but they are totally associated. Hospital, we're a private group of surgeons that practice at both hospitals, but our office is in the medical building at Carolinas Hospital.
Right. Dr. Floyd, if you weren't currently the founder and president of Floyd Medical Associates, what do you think you'd be doing?
Ooh, I don't know. My father was in the automobile business, and if I hadn't gone to medical school, I'd have probably been a businessman in the automobile business or something like that. So I really don't know, but I can't think of anything that I'd rather be doing than what I am right now. I love surgery. I love the people. I just love to be associated with it, and I have a group of partners that have made it possible for me to continue, and I appreciate it very much because I certainly enjoy being around.
Absolutely. Lastly, Dr. Floyd, who do you think's been the greatest inspiration for you?
Well, of course, as far as my family, my family is concerned, of course, my wife and children mean an awful lot to me. I'm very close. I'm very lucky to have a wonderful, beautiful, smart wife that does all. But from a professional standpoint and business standpoint and from a mentor standpoint, Dr. Lee is just been such an inspiration to me and been of so much help, and it's just like he's my father. I mean, he's been that close to me, and I always tease his son. He has a son that practices with me, Dr. Frank Lee Jr., and I always tease Frank Jr. that I think I'm closer to his daddy than he is, which is not really true, but I like to think that anyway.
Oh, yeah. Inspired by a loving and amazing wife, 3 amazing children, so many grandchildren, but particularly inspired by last Thursday's distinguished citizen, Dr. Frank Lee Sr., Dr. Frank as he's known. Dr. Eddie Floyd, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Good.
Stay tuned to Jim O'Laughlin coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome back to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Florence Civic Center. We're focused on the Distinguished Citizens Award Dinner of the Pee Dee Area Council of the Boy Scouts, which was held here last Thursday evening. And we're visiting with Jim O'Laughlin, the Chief Executive Officer of Carolina's hospital system and an executive board member for the Pee Dee Area Council. Good morning, Jim.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thanks so much for being in. Incredible to think about all the activities going on within the executive board now, and just the entire Pee Dee Area Council. The Boy Scouts are hopping.
A lot of activity going on. We see more and more boys enrolling in Boy Scouts, and the council is very, very active. So it's great to see in this community.
To see that dinner last week, I think Mark Bike was in yesterday talking about there were almost 500 folks at the celebration. All the youth there intermingling with adults, celebrating Bernie Moore Quarter Century Award. Amazing to think of that commitment.
A great turnout, not only from the corporate sector, but also the private citizens, again, to recognize some distinguished citizens, and also to support the Boy Scouts.
Absolutely. Jim, real quick about yourself. Were you originally from the area?
No, I've recently relocated here. I've been here about 9 months now, and really enjoy it. Have relocated from the state of Alabama.
Great. What were you doing in Alabama?
I was the CEO of a couple of hospitals in the northern part of the state.
Do you have family with you here?
I do. I have a wife and 2 children. In fact, my son is in Boy Scouts.
Is that right?
And we're real excited about that.
It was so exciting last night preparing to talk to you today, going through your resume and seeing you'd had an undergraduate degree at Springfield College up in Massachusetts, and then a master's at USC, and a PhD at Florida State, and then later an MBA at Nova University. It was incredible to think about that. Did you ever think you'd stop taking classes?
I couldn't find anything that I was good at, so I had to continue on. But it seemed to go on for a long time, and just as my career advanced, particularly in healthcare, I kind of moved from the clinical side to the business side in administration, and needed those degrees. But I think for a period of time there, my wife thought that I would be in school forever as well.
Well, that was probably a good inspiration for your children at the time to be able to say school's very important. Look at Daddy.
That's true.
That's great. That's great. You said you assumed the position as CEO of Carolina's hospital system only about 9 months ago.
Yeah, December of '02, so about 9-10 months ago.
How's the transition been from Alabama to the PD area?
We really have enjoyed it. The community has been very gracious, and have an opportunity to get involved with the community in different activities, and that's been something that we really appreciate. And my children have adjusted well to the schools, and when you move a 13 and a 15-year-old, that's always a big issue, and everything has gone very well.
Jim, how long have you worked in the field of hospital administration?
You know, it's probably been about 20 years now, in various capacities, and ranging from Florida to Oklahoma, Alabama, and now South Carolina.
How does one become a hospital administrator?
Well, you know, there's probably no one single approach. Generally, either somebody will go to school to work on what they call a master's in healthcare administration. My role was a little bit different in terms of coming from a clinical side and then moving into the administrative side. But generally, today, to be an administrator of a hospital, they're looking for somebody who has experience. And generally, you'll do that perhaps serving as an assistant administrator or chief operating officer. And then the educational background to have either a master's in healthcare administration or a master's in business administration.
Okay. For a viewer who may not understand this, exactly what a chief executive officer does, can you share with us your responsibilities with that title?
Yeah, it's an interesting job, and that's one of the things that I think makes it such a rewarding career, is that when you manage a hospital, you manage a multitude of different departments. You've got your clinical side, but because it's a hospital, you also have your accounting, you have finance, you have engineering. And so what an administrator of the hospital does is, one, to manage the operations of the facility to make sure that it's operating efficiently, but also strategically to set a direction for the hospital and to develop a culture. Hospitals are still involved, and the main thing is patient care, and it's important that the leadership of the hospital focus on patient care and set that message throughout the entire facility.
Are you also involved in, let's say, the food and beverage side of the hospital?
Yeah, almost every, if you look at a city and what all the services you have to manage for a city, you have the same thing in a hospital. You have the food and beverage, you have, again, purchasing, environmental services, engineering, because it's like a little corporation in itself.
When we think about, as you said, the big focus on the patients, but oftentimes there's a heck of a lot more folks associated with that patient that comes to visit, all the visitors who come in, the family members who are around. Those are the folks who are spending time in the food and beverage side of a hospital, and those are the folks who may walk away with the biggest impression. I mean, the person there as a patient may not, obviously their experience is dramatic, but all the family members and visitors who come in really take away a lot.
And you raise a very good point, is oftentimes someone's perception of the quality of the hospital is tied to how the family feels about the hospital. You know, is their loved one getting their needs met? Are call lights being answered on time? Was the room clean? Was a nurse nice that came into the room? And those are all perceptions that really family members tend to pick up on. So you always want to make sure that you are servicing the needs of the family, not just the patient. Obviously, the patient comes first, but families are very important in this process as well.
Jim, when did Carolina's hospital system open at its present facility?
About 4.5 years ago, the facility was constructed, and really was the result of a merger of two hospitals in the community, Florence General Hospital and the Bruce Hospital. And those two hospitals were consolidated, and then a new hospital was developed, Carolina's Hospital System. And again, it's been about 4.5 to 5 years since that facility has been open.
Okay. Can you share with the viewers a little bit about some of Carolina's hospital system's priorities for servicing the needs of this very large community?
Well, one of the things that we've identified is that Florence services the needs not only of this local community, but it has become a hub of medical services for the majority of this part of the state, which means that the services that we provide need to be a little bit more expansive, such as oncology services, orthopedic services, neurosurgical services, heart services. Now, one of the things that we have identified, not just we in the hospital, but in the state, is that the PD area tends to have a high incidence of stroke, heart disease, and one of the things that we think we can improve on is trying to educate the community on improving dietary habits, the benefits of exercise, early prevention, because the PD area is still known as having, again, a high incidence of some of the major diseases that we see in this country.
Very definitely. Well, that's a big impact you all can have on the community.
Right, and that's something that doesn't happen overnight, but it's something that hospitals need to be involved in.
Let's talk real quick about last Thursday night's distinguished citizen who had a dramatic, and has had and will continue to have a dramatic impact on Carolina's hospital system. Can you share with the viewers a little bit about Dr. Frank Lee Sr., and do you have a congratulations message for him?
Well, Dr. Frank Lee is just an outstanding individual, and he is one of the original founders of the hospital. And not only just from the standpoint of the hospital, but his philosophy of hard work and patient care is something that we want to continue to aspire to. And for Dr. Lee, we wouldn't have the hospital we have today without his hard work and everything he's done to promote that, but also his philosophy continues in that hospital, and we're proud to try to continue that heritage.
Absolutely, absolutely. And another heritage you've obviously got active in is now the PD Area Council of the Boy Scouts. Was that partly prompted from your son's interest in scouting?
To some extent, I was a Boy Scout, and that was very important part of my life. I look back and look at the things I learned through scouting, and look at those years very fondly, and want to make sure that other children have an opportunity to participate in Boy Scouts like I had that opportunity. So I feel it's important to give back to the community, and also to see that Boy Scouts continues to grow. I think it's an important part of this community.
Absolutely. And the great thing is when you see the footprint of the PD Area Council, through the 11 counties there, it thoroughly overlaps with Carolina's hospital system's focus area when you talk about it, not just the local community of Florence,
That's
but
right.
a very large area.
About 350,000 people
Wow.
are incorporated in that area.
Jim, you've also served on the steering committee for the Distinguished Citizens Award. What have you learned from participation on this committee?
Individuals like Dr. Lee, there's always a few individuals in a community that stand out. When you look at the benefits that a community derives over the years, it's because of a hard work of a few individuals, and it's nice to be able to recognize those individuals. And I think that certainly Dr. Lee and the recipients this year exemplify what we need more in this community, is that people to be involved, to take an active interest, and I'm pleased to be able to serve on that committee.
You're about to celebrate a year in the PD, Jim. What do you think's impressed you the most about your move to Florence and your position with Carolina's hospital system?
I think in terms of the community of Florence, I've been real impressed with it's a progressive community. The community is looking at what they can do to improve the services, and I've been involved with several committees looking at whether it's rails to trails for bicycling. So there's a large group of people that really are focused on improving the community. And from the standpoint of the hospital, I've been very impressed with the folks I've had an opportunity to work with. We have just a great team of people, and I feel very fortunate to be there.
I think I saw on y'all's website, Jim, there's 1,800 folks associated with the hospital, another 225 or so folks associated in the physician sense. It's an amazing institution when you think about, I think viewers would be fascinated to know just some basic things for that position as chief executive officer. For a guy like that, for instance, what was your first childhood job?
My first childhood job was a paper route.
Is that right?
And then I moved into a more formal job working Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Wow.
As a cook. And one of the things I've always done early on was to work. And that was part of the expectation my family had, is that you're going to help support the family. And my father was a police officer, and I think that set the message that hard work is good. And so I started off as paper route, caddy, and then formally got to jobs when I was 15. And
That's fantastic. You don't just become a CEO. I mean, there's a heck of a lot of work.
that, and I think you certainly have to have that, to be proactive and have that motivation to be willing to put the time in and the effort to be successful.
Absolutely. Jim, if you weren't currently the Chief Executive Officer of Carolina's hospital system, what do you think you'd be doing?
Well, that's a good question, because I've been in hospital administration for so many years. I started out in the clinical side. I still think that I would be involved in patient care in some capacity. I've always enjoyed that, and one of the benefits, I think, of being a CEO of a hospital is that while you manage the operations, you have an opportunity to still feel like you're making a difference. And I try every day to get up on the patient floors and talk to the patients and ask them about the care. And there's something that's very rewarding about that perhaps is not available in other careers, where you can still manage a business, but at the same time you see the impact you have on the community and an individual. And I would be involved in some capacity working with people, probably in the healthcare field.
Making a difference in the lives of patients, but also their families, and also the amazing staff at Carolina's hospital system. The community's large. Surely the focus is there. Jim, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
I do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Stay tuned to more Carolina People coming up next. We want to thank Dr. Eddie Floyd and Jim O'Laughlin, both great community servants, for making today's Carolina People so special.